everybody wants to say development and academy, and it's probably one of the most misused words in the United States.
It's 1993, and Oliver Wyss is about to sign a contract with the biggest club in his country.
I thought, hey, I'm 19 years old. Then I turned this down to come to the MLS.
Then, tragedy.
I was so severely sick that my goals were actually just to have a chance of having a normal life.
Just like that, his playing days were over, but he wasn't done with soccer. 30 years later, he's now the general manager at one of the USL's most successful clubs, on and off the pitch.
We've had Champions League teams, we have Premier League teams who wanted to come and be part of this and buy a part of the club or even buy the entire club.
Orange County is pioneering their player pathway model, where first they develop and then sell players on for a profit.
We can develop these players as good or even better as anywhere else in the world. We want to sell you.
In June, they shattered the league's transfer record.
We believe in our players, we believe in this market, and we believe that these players can actually make a significant impact even in the European market, and that's what we're so excited about.
Why leave the comfort in your home in Switzerland and move to a completely new playing field, the US, in 1994?
Wow, you've done all the research going back. 1994 seems such a long time ago. But, well, look, I was fortunate enough to grow up in Switzerland and been in the European-style soccer system, right, where you play for a local youth soccer club and you move your way through, and there's a first team that plays in a certain division, and your goal is to represent the first team as soon as possible because this is where you play up, this is your city you get to represent. But while I was playing and competing, was a professional age 16, so I was fairly young. I've always had the luxury to travel to the United States on my time off, and I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the size, the freedom, if you want to call it like this. And I was a big fan of either New York and Los Angeles, big cities. And when the opportunity arose that there was going to be a professional soccer league starting in 1994, the MLS, I thought, hey, I'm 19 years old. This might be a great time to become the first Swiss player to join and move to the United States and play in the MLS. I had a good contract at FC Solothurn. I was supposed to move to FC Zurich, and then I turned this down to come to the MLS. And when I was in the United States, I found out that unfortunately the MLS was postponed for a year. While I was supposed to play in New York, I ended up going to Los Angeles, where I had some friends from my previous travels and hooked up with the LA Salsa, which at that time was a very good professional team that had the majority of the U.S. national team players that actually ended up playing in the World Cup, plus some foreign players, and ended up playing for them, and then had to join indoors. And again, the goal was to move from Switzerland to continue my professional soccer career in the United States.
At that period, we were sort of looking over your shoulder at the potential to play in MLS, or still sticking indoor?
No. I was only going indoor to bypass the time between the MLS was going to start off. And when I went into the indoors, it was, as I said, it was a great experience. My goal was obviously to move into the MLS at that time. But then unfortunately, I had to retire at age 21 due to a blood disorder called severe aplastic anemia. I was very fortunate that my brother was a perfect match. I had a bone marrow transplant, but he ended my professional playing days, and he started my coaching and youth development days because, again, as I said at the beginning, I was very impressed by the talent of players that I saw. And I'm like, wow, where are all these kids playing? And to find out that they just played in youth soccer clubs, went into high school, potentially into college, and a few of them made, a professional league that was just going to start off. And I said, wow, with this kind of talent, these players should be playing on the highest level.
In that moment when you were forced to retire, did you ever pause and be lost in that moment that you didn't really know what your future lie? Or were you instantly sort of, okay, I'm going to go into coaching, going to go into the business side? You graduated with a career in a business degree in Switzerland.
Well, listen, I was so severely sick that my goals were actually just to have a chance of having a normal life. After we went through a bone marrow transplant, where you go from being one day a professional athlete to the other day being extremely sick and fighting for your life and living off machines in a cancer hospital up at the called City of Hope. You don't worry about playing again. You worry about just having a normal life and getting married and potentially having children. So I think soccer was obviously my passion, was my life, but that changed And then I thought going back into when after a year of treatment, the one thing I wanted to go back was to soccer, and obviously coaching was then the next step in my development.
In this period, you're starting out coaching. Are you doing some licenses on the side or just for fun? And then you eventually start to realize, okay, I can keep getting better and keep actually getting the papers that say I am going somewhere.
No, look, I'm Swiss, so I'm extremely disciplined and career driven, right? With that said, as soon as I started coaching, it was like for me being a player, taking care of your daily. Wanted to do my licensing. I did my CB and USA license in a span of 3 years. At that time, you could do a little bit quicker. Also, when I was played back in Switzerland, when you're part of the youth national teams, you're actually doing some of your Swiss licensing as well. So I was prepared to start youth coaching because I've known what the game was, and I wanted to do that next. And then ultimately became the director of coaching for West Coast Football Club and educating and working with other coaches. And there was a time where we had, I believe, 80 or 90 youth teams and about 20 or 25 coaches. So it became a fairly large organization that I got to run and build up from scratch, and it was very enjoyable.
And where did eventually Orange County come into the fold?
I was fortunate enough to be asked by the former owner and founder, Ali Mansouri. At that time, it was called the Orange County Blues FC in the USL when he was Division 3, if I would be interested to coach the team. After a few thoughts, I was like, look, am I ready to go into the professional ranks? But I felt, again, very strongly about this community, Orange County. At that time, I think I was 15 years into building a youth club, and it was fairly well known with some good success and good relationships, that I felt I was ready to take on that challenge, but always knowing that I wanted to get started, and everybody needs to start in a professional rank, and mine was through coaching. That ultimately my real liking positioning probably more like a general manager who could be part of the coaching, obviously understanding what a coach means, and then build a club that the entire community could be proud of.
Yeah, so you came into the club with that vision that you did enjoy the business aspect slightly more, but you coached for 2 years and then eventually transitioned once, would you say maybe the club was mature enough and ready for you to take that step and they hired someone else?
Actually, the switch came when James Kesson, our current majority owner, bought the club. And obviously, when we were talking about it, we had a very clear vision that we both supported from day one, that, look, there's a lot of talented soccer players in Orange County in Southern California. Can we build a professional pathway here that ultimately will make a difference in the USL, will make a difference with players going into Europe and benefit the US national team? And there's also a financial reward to it, right? Let's be very honest. The annual transfer market value to a global is about 8 to 10 billion. The USA at that point in time had very to none, contributed to this. So we thought, hey, look, if we can build a clear development model with a pathway through a first team with top players and create an environment that we felt that we could build a team together that will ultimately be successful in, one, competing for championships, and in two, developing players for the European market.
Yeah, so today you're known as the president of soccer operations as well as the general manager. You're day-to-day working on, I would assume, a lot of different projects at once just to sort of keep moving this team forwards.
Oh, yes. I mean, look, I look at it this way. From the morning, early morning when you get up to evening at night, it's usually problem solving, right? You never really hear all the good things that are going on. You always have to find solutions for issues. Is it related to players? Is it related to the organization? Is it related to stadium, fans, fields? There's always something that goes on and that you ultimately have to manage and make sure you can get a hold of everything and get the job done. So I can tell you in my profession, yes, there are early days and late nights. And then specifically when we include our European market, right, there's many phone calls with a 9-hour time change that kind of, I also say I will sleep the day when I'm retiring from the sports industry. The work hasn't stopped. You know, when you have accomplished a certain level, it's actually harder to sustain that and build of that than actually getting there. So we have our challenges and they haven't gone up, but it's also enjoyable and continue to work every day as hard as I possibly can.
That 9-hour time difference, is that Rangers?
Well, that'd actually be 8. Into the UK, it's
Oh,
8,
yeah,
but
of
into
course.
the rest of Europe, our players are in a global market. We have a very Europeanized staff here, and we believe in that in that market. So, and we have a lot of friends who still working there. For me personally, specifically, so there's never a dull moment, as we call it, in this aspect.
And I'm sure it's not just the transfer market, but other aspects of your communication with Europe.
Oh, yes. I mean, listen, we always want to position the club. How do we better our club, right? And obviously, again, we've built a pathway that is basically very similar to what it is in Europe. The way I grew up, and the way, like, where our coaches are coming from, right, from England, where you have a development structure, you have a reserve team of young professionals, and you have a first team that you try to incorporate some of these young professionals and then sell them on for a significant amount of money, keep future transfer rights, and make a real business sense out of it. So Europe is our market of choice. I'm not saying that we are not interested in the Mexican market, the South American market, or even into the MLS, if you will make sense. But it's very clear that Europe is on top of our pathway structure. We have a wonderful relationship with Glasgow Rangers, but we're obviously working with multiple clubs.
The two headlines when it comes to Orange County and Europe, first of all, Kobe Henry sold to Stade Rennes, and that relationship with Glasgow Rangers. And I think just hearing from what you're talking about right now, yes, they're the two headlines and the things that stand out, but there are a lot of things that Orange County continues to work on and happen behind the scenes to have the club moving forwards.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, look, speaking with Glasgow Rangers, before we even did a partnership with Glasgow Rangers, we have multiple clubs from Europe that are very much interested into what we are building and what we had already built. And don't forget, Orange County, if you would just compare it as in real estate, is an incredible real estate market. And teams are interested. And we've had Champions League teams, we have Premier League teams who wanted to come and be part of this and buy a part of the club or even buy the entire club. But we didn't feel that we were ready, one, to, first of all, give up the club. And second of all, we wanted to make sure that we actually partner up with somebody that doesn't look at us simply as a marketing tool and a brand awareness in Southern California, but actually to partner up with a club that wants to develop our young players. And when we looked at it at Glasgow Rangers, it was a perfect fit for us when we did it 4 years ago. Now, of course, Glasgow Rangers as a club has dramatically grown, right? They're now in the Champions League again. They won this Scottish title again. At that time, they had Steven Gerrard as a head coach. Now, obviously, they have Ngio and another fantastic former player turned head coach. And their goals are now on a completely different level, but we've obviously transferred Aaron Cervantes over there, our young goalkeeper. We have other players who still go over there for training. We still have a good relationship, but I think we've also grown as has they. And as again, even with Kobe Henry, not every player is a perfect fit for one club. And it was clear that Kobe Henry with Stade de Reims in France was a perfect fit for him. And he was one of the youngest teams in Europe last year, where the average age was about 23 years old, and they play a lot of young players and resell young players. And we felt, and so did Kobe and his agent and everybody else, that was the ideal club for Kobe once he moves from Orange County Soccer Club, where he can continue his development with obviously proving himself in the French First Division, and hopefully from there having another big transfer. And then that will be our real return of investment.
You were, of course, talking to those Premier League and Champions League teams, but it sounds to me like, okay, yes, you can bring in the investment, possibly see it as more of a marketing thing, but what you're building at Orange County is more than just this marketing tool, and it's an organization that could be a representation of this new US movement towards, again, like really developing these players and providing a platform to move on and do better things.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Look, when we set this out to do, we were very clear what we want to accomplish, and it's not easy. Right? Everybody wants to say development and academy, and it's probably one of the most misused words in the United States because one, it's expensive, and then two, you have to commit it for it. And the most important thing is that you actually have within your own organization, everybody be fully aligned, right? From top to bottom. We said, look, we want to build a team that the community can be proud of, that obviously competes for championships. But then our second ambition was to really build that pathway because, let's face it, financially, it's definitely the most rewarding one is player transfers. not just in a typical American business model where you increase franchise value, which we obviously have done as well too. But we felt that the real return in your investment was by player development. And I think we've been able now to show that the USL player, like Kobe Henry, actually has a value, has a significant value, and can get this done. And I think there was an important transfer for the league. It was very important for us. It obviously shows that what we're doing is right and that our investment is heading into the right direction. But it becomes challenging because now it's who's the next Kobe Henry. We obviously have a few very talented players. You interviewed Correde, so you can imagine that open up some eyes to that market and into Europe.
When those eyes do come to players like Correde or previously like Kobe, do you think that it's starting to build not just more eyes for Orange County, but in general USL perhaps as and MLS too? The value's there and these players could perform for teams in Europe.
Oh yeah, I think it's proof of concept, right? And the difference is a little bit in the USL. We obviously control the player rights 100%. We control our own franchise, so we do business as it is anywhere else in the world. In the MLS, that's a little bit more complicated, right? With a single entity league. And they're probably not as much in the market of actually selling players. They're more in trying to retain the players. Where we're saying, hey, listen, we want to sell you. You know, by FIFA law, the player has to be 18 unless he has an EU passport. We have some of them as well too. But it's very clear that we feel between the ages of 15 to 18, while they're actually eligible to actually move permanently over and on a transfer to Europe, that we can develop these players as good or even better as anywhere else in the world because we have a fantastic coaching staff. We have an IDP manager that only works with our young players. They're training daily. They're already in the first team setting the best players. They're playing with players that have played on the absolutely highest level. Players like Michael Orozco, right, who's played for the US 29 times and played on the highest level in Mexico and in the United States, is a fantastic role model, for example, for a Kobe Henry, as is Rob Kiernan and other players that we've had. And I think we've been able to establish not only a pathway through the youth, but actually a professional environment where these players really flourish and being challenged on a daily basis, and provided them with the opportunity to maximize their potential.
Did that 2021 USL Championship win, did that feel like a culmination of everything that you had put in this club and everything that the organization has stood for since?
Personally, I'm speaking for myself. Yes, 100%. I want to win. I've won on every level as a player, and on the youth level, I'm extremely competitive. And I wanted to win a USL Championship from the first day I became a head coach. We've been in the playoffs multiple times. We've been in the Western Conference Finals a few times before. Sadly, when we were there, Didier Drogba scored his last goal against us in the Western Conference Final for Phoenix, and we didn't get the chance to go into the final. It definitely showed that the balance between competing and winning for trophies and developing players, between developing and alongside with Kobe Henry, who got the call up for the first national team, right, alongside with the U20s, and played 18 games for us last year. These are kind of like the moments when everything between player development and winning a league comes together. Again, it takes a little bit of luck, but I think it's down to the commitment that we've done over all these years, and we finally actually got the reward for being consistent and stayed with it, and believed in these young players and believed in our club. And it was really, it all came together in a very special, perfect moment in Tampa when we ended up lifting the trophy.
Do you have a secret talent?
I would say I'm a have a master sommelier.
A what?
Master sommelier is no wine. I have a very big hobby in wine drinking and wine making, and so I would say my secret hobby or talent maybe be wine tasting as a sommelier.
There you go. Little deep cut.
You're not old enough yet.
Not
Are you 21 yet? So you don't know yet. So when you're 21, I'll gladly have you over. We'll enjoy some fine wine together.
Favorite project you've ever worked on?
Orange County Soccer Club.
What era would you have liked to play in?
Wow. I think if I look back and I see the area in the 80s when Maradona in the early 90s, that would have been a fun time to play at. I think the players at that stage, what they've done was just simply incredible. So I think the in a professional aspect in the 80s, that would have been probably the funnest time to play in.
US or Switzerland?
It's a twofold question. I'm so glad I grew up in Switzerland and got to grow up in a country that had a global education and values that I think helped me be successful in the US. That has a great education as well too, but maybe not as much of a global aspect behind it.
A piece of advice for those in soccer business.
Wow, be prepared to work extremely hard. And again, it's the most rewarding sports industry you can be in, but it's also very challenging. So if you're willing to work hard and stay disciplined, it's a great business to be in.
Last question, Oliver. It's a question I ask all my guests. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, I'd be still working in the soccer industry, trying to take Orange County to even the next level and incorporate the European aspects to it as well too. I believe in the American player. I specifically believe in the local player, but I'm obviously a big fan of the European soccer market and that. So if there's a way to combine these even more, then I think that's where I will be. I happen also to be a fairly big basketball fan, as you can tell behind me, the Michael Jordan. Yeah. One of the first posters I actually bought. On the other side is actually Pele. That's probably will be more to our interview. But with that said,